I'm not a big believer in fate. I'm not a big believer in magic and hocus pocus and all of that good stuff and the universe aligning together. But September 30th, all worlds seemed to collide. Last year I woke up on September 30th, which is my birthday, and I go to Twitter because the first thing I do when I wake up is pull out this phone and do everything for this network. And I don't think we were 24 hours yet. No, we couldn't have been. So I wake up on this day last year, and I look at Twitter and I see everybody talking about International Podcast Day, and I thought, what in the world is International Podcast Day? Well, it turns out that September 30th is indeed International Podcast Day. My birthday, International Podcast Day, and now Podcrawl, all on the same day this year. If that's not an omen that this network is taking off, then I don't know what the hell is. I am Brian Crawford. I am the master of the Millvale Shore, and you are here at riversedgepgh.com, powered by NJL WebTech. Honest, practical, and affordable. Go to njlwebtech.com for all your web servicing needs. It's an unfortunate day in Pittsburgh sports. In fact, I would argue it's probably the worst day in Pittsburgh sports, at least this year. And I'm here drinking an Arnold Palmer iced tea in memory of the late, great golfer, Arnold Palmer. And I was going to talk a lot about what he has done here locally, especially in where I grew up, out in Westmoreland County. And we probably will talk about that throughout the show. But I want to get Matt Geica on here in just a minute. He was he's supposed to call in at 10:15. So we're going to talk to him about the Pittsburgh sporting weekend, which was a disaster. A disaster! I went on football in high heels. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll tell you now. I went on football in high heels, and I made a prediction about the Steeler game, and boy, was I wrong. Wow. Not a good game for the Steelers. Bad weekend all around for the Pirates. For Pittsburgh sports, the Pirates, they lost, the Steelers lost, Pitt lost, everybody lost. Really bad day for Pittsburgh sports. But Arnold Palmer had such a big influence on the Latrobe area, which is out in Westmoreland County, probably one of the nicer towns in Westmoreland County. I always enjoyed going out to Latrobe, getting a drink at Sharky's. And an interesting thought, I don't know who meant more to Latrobe. Was it Arnold Palmer, or was it Steelers training camp? And that sounds like that might be a joke, but really, go to Sharky's any Steelers Sunday, and you cannot find a seat in the place. It's electric. And it's interesting because you compare that to the city. I would actually argue that the crowd for a football game, a Steelers football game at Sharky's, is way crazier than the crowd that you would get in Pittsburgh at a bar for the same game. Conversely, you go out to Sharky's for a Penguin game, and the Penguins score, and about 30 seconds later, everyone goes, "Woo!" because they weren't paying attention and they saw the game on replay. But there's so much named after Arnold Palmer in Latrobe. The airport, for example. There's a car dealer. Everything just seems to be named after him, and I guess it makes sense. The guy changed the way that we view golf. He won 7 majors. He won the Masters 4 times, the U.S. Open. He's won the Open. He's won. He's a winner, and he's from Latrobe. He's done a lot in the area, and we got Matt Geica on the phone right now. We're going to talk to him about Arnold here. Hello, Matt. Are you there?
Yes, let's talk to Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Today, or yesterday rather, would you say that this past weekend may have been, or is probably, in my opinion, the worst day in Pittsburgh sports this year?
This year, yeah, if you combine a whole bunch of things. You're saying just Sunday or the weekend? Sorry.
The weekend, with the passing of Arnold Palmer, the Steelers game, the Pirates' last game, Pitt. It just seems like everything came together to just one heaping pile of dung.
Yeah, I would agree with that for the most part, and the Penguins weren't involved in that situation. Although I guess you could say they had Nick Bonino get hurt at a scrimmage on Sunday at Cranberries. So
Well, that's not good. I did not know that.
no, it's not. But we'll see on the severity of that. But that was a difficult one, and even going outside the sphere of Pittsburgh sports, the death of Marlins star pitcher Jose Fernandez, as announced or revealed Sunday morning, that might have been the biggest kick in the stomach for me, just personally as a general sports fan, because he was a player who was already great, but was going to be one of the all-time greats, I have no doubt. And to have him taken away, that hurts at a different type of a level than, say, a typical loss, whether it be football or baseball. And even Arnold Palmer, at 87 years old, I think we all realized we had limited time left with Arnie, and he had a full life. Boy, did he ever.
Well, it's
but
funny.
With Fernandez, it's almost like that one stung me the most.
Yeah, that was definitely a shocker. And it's funny you mentioned that about Arnold Palmer, because when I heard the news last night, the first thing I thought was, oh, that's terrible. And then I thought for a second, well, no, it's not. He was 87 years old. He had a great life. Like, if I can make it to that age and live that kind of life, that's not really a terrible thing. It was maybe surprising because you didn't, hear about his health all the time in the news, but it wasn't really that, if you think about it, it really wasn't that awful. I mean, it was awful. You never would have seen anyone die, but he lived a good life.
He did. And when I was out at Oakmont for the U.S. Open this year, which of course is in suburban Pittsburgh, and Arnie couldn't make it out to the tournament, that's when you realize things were probably pretty bad for him, just for the fact that it would be less than an hour drive from his home in Latrobe to Oakmont. So that made you start thinking, well, what's going on with him? And we didn't hear too much from his representatives or his side of things at all. So that worried me a bit, but then I forgot about it with everything going on during the summer after that. And sometimes older folks go through situations like that, and they pull through, and they have several years to go. But I think the one thing about Palmer's death that makes it a little more of a poignant thing, or more of an injury to all of us who love watching him, is that golf allows for a long, long career. And I didn't know him in his prime. I'm 31 years old, so I only knew him just a little bit on the senior PGA Tour and then his ceremonial appearances. But he had his own tournament on the PGA Tour down in Bay Hill in Orlando, Florida. And just until last year, he was still hitting the ceremonial opening tee shot at the Masters, Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player. Or maybe it was a couple of years ago that he stopped hitting it. But in golf, you have a much longer lifespan, so to speak, than other sports.
Sure. Now, what do you think Arnold Palmer's biggest influence was? Do you think it was on the Latrobe area, the golf game at large, or do you think it was the tasty beverage he concocted by adding lemonade and iced tea?
Well, I think his longest-lasting legacy might be the last thing you said there with the beverage. But you look back at when he made his money on tour, when he made his fame, when he became the most popular, golfer in the world. Golf was not a marquee sport, and now you see yesterday Rory McIlroy makes a putt for $11 million. So that tells you how far the game has progressed, and Tiger Woods gets a great deal of credit for that too. But before Tiger, who was definitely a people's champion and had the impact on culture because of his race too, but with Palmer, he made the sport accessible for blue-collar folks, and I'm fairly certain I wouldn't have grown up playing the game and loving the game without the existence of Arnold Palmer, because I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't grow up in a country club, and so he popularized the game for people who weren't in the upper crust of society, which at that time, I know it's a people's game now, but it's instructive to remember or try to think back and imagine what it was like back then. Tennis and golf were country club sports, and now both of them are certainly mainstream, and we owe that transformation to some of the great stars who came along, and Palmer is foremost among them.
Talk about Jose Fernandez as we're talking about these athletes who passed this weekend. He had an interesting past. I didn't realize, I didn't know much about him, to be honest, because he was outside of the Pittsburgh realm, but I was very fascinated to read that he was actually somebody who fled Cuba and made it to the United States, and I felt like that almost, you never want to see anyone die again, but it almost made it seem more impactful that he didn't just have that silver spoon his whole life. He really was somebody who had an interesting backstory.
He sure did. And Cuba is becoming more accessible to major league teams as our relations as a country with Cuba have softened and have become more cordial and more cooperative over the years. But when Jose was growing up, which is just about 10 years ago, he was determined to come to America because he knew that there was no other way he was going to become, or he thought there was no other way he was going to become a major league pitcher. And he only played 1 year of minor league baseball. He was drafted in 2011, full year in 2012, and then made his debut in 2013 at 20 years old, and was dominant that first year. And his stuff was amazing. And if you're not a baseball fan, stuff means the quality of his pitches. The fastball hummed, the curveball was darting, and his personality just put the capper on it for me. He was so passionate about the sport. I always love to see the shots of him in the dugout celebrating his teammates' accomplishments. I think that told you a lot about how much he loved the game, and just enjoyed seeing other people do well and be well. So there's a double whammy to it, because not only was he a great pitcher at 24 years old, and he came back from arm surgery a couple of years ago to get right back to that level, even better than he was previously, but he still had 15 years left, and I have no doubt he would have been the best player in Marlins history and the best, or one of the best pitchers of his generation. But you look at his backstory, his enthusiasm, what he meant to that Miami community especially, which has so many Cuban immigrants and people of Cuban descent. It's a massive blow.
Yeah, definitely. Getting back to home and back to Pittsburgh, and we're going to have Matt Gribshaw. He's a professional golfer here locally. He's going to be on a little bit later to talk about Arnold Palmer and the impact that Arnold had on his life. But getting back to the local teams, what happened? I mean, what happened? Was it a full moon?
Well, with the Steelers, which I'm sure most people are concerned about today, I think most of us at least, were looking at that New England game in a few weeks and saying there's a good chance that the Steelers are 6-0 when they face the Patriots. And now they have the loss to their credit, and it was no ordinary loss. It was the biggest loss in terms of margin of victory since 1989 for the Steelers, which is amazing because teams have bad games, and that was certainly one of them. But it's crazy that they've never lost by as much as 32 since I was 4 years old, going way back to the 80s. But I think we all knew the defense was going to be a challenge, especially pass defense this year. But the whole unit underperformed yesterday. And then you throw in some injuries: Ryan Shazier, Mike Mitchell. The third one's escaping me, Lawrence Timmons. They all were removed from the game. And then you have a whole bunch of young players in the secondary. So not terribly surprised to see that result against a quarterback in Carson Wentz, who's taking the NFL by storm in his first year. However, the offensive performance would, I think, discourage me more, because this was a team that, even without Le'Veon Bell, who they'll get back next week, and Martavis Bryant, I think we all thought they could average 25-30 a game, and they have to get close to that to give themselves a chance to win, considering their defensive deficiencies. And to score 3 points, it's really tough to score just 3 points in a professional football game these days. So that one, I think, has me wondering what's going on, the offensive performance, more than what happened on defense.
Yeah, especially after the last two games, because I thought that with all of the injuries and suspension, at first I thought, oh man, they're going to have a really rough time making it. And then they played their first two games, and I thought, oh, that's great. They may actually be able to make something of this season, despite everything thrown against them and things that they threw themselves into. But then yesterday happened, and now I'm back to wondering how they're going to do this year. It's like a roller coaster.
The one respite that the Steelers have is that it was, even though it's a game against your in-state opponent, and There's so many crossover folks in this state who, live between Pittsburgh and Philly, so you feel for the Steelers fans who are in the eastern side of the state today. But it was a non-conference game, non-division game. So it's about as low consequence as you can get in a sport where every game is relatively important compared to the other ones. You don't want to lose.
Sure.
And you don't want to lose a game like that when you only play in Philadelphia once every 8 years. But at the same time, you can rebound from those types of losses more easily.
Let's just touch base real quick on the other sports, and then I'll let you go. I know you got a busy day ahead of you.
Well, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the Pirates then if I'm going to have the open floor. I was hesitant to write them off until you get to the final week and there's several games back of the playoffs, and they are now. And yesterday at PNC Park was one of the most sluggish baseball games I've ever watched, and there were 17 runs scored, and it still felt like a snooze just because of all the pitching changes and substitutions and replay delays. So pace of play is still a concern, and for the Pirates, their concerns are continue to be many, as one of their top pitching prospects, and Tyler Glass, now continues to have a difficult time with his arsenal and figuring things out at this level. So I think for this final week, we can finally put to bed they're still technically in it thought, and just look ahead to 2017. 4 games against the Cubs, stiff competition, best team in baseball this week, and then 3 at St. Louis, which is always a tough matchup no matter how the Cardinals are doing. So a test coming up for some of the Pirates rookies to continue to progress in their first year, and also for the veterans to keep their energy up and push toward the finish in what's been a very frustrating second half for all of them. Yeah,
it was disappointing because I felt this year I thought they had some things going for them, but just
they did.
wasn't working out. All right, Matt, thank you very much. Get yourself an Arnold Palmer and celebrate the life of a great southwestern Pennsylvania guy. So
I will, no doubt. And thank you, Brian, for having me.
As always, that's Matt Gajka with your sports update here on the River's Edge. As I said a little bit earlier, I made a prediction on Football on High Heels. It's a show that I've been brought on as a guest for the last couple weeks, and I thought that the Steelers were going to blow Philadelphia out of the water. That was my prediction, but I did at least save face a little bit where I said that those games are usually the ones that the Steelers lose. But I'm there yesterday. I'm at a Super Bowl party that Frank Murgy put together. He's our friend from the Pittsburgh Podcast Network, and this place is packed, and the Steelers are just getting their asses handed to them by the Eagles, and really the only thing I could care about is that the place we were at didn't have Oktoberfest beer. All they had was pumpkin. Why? Why did the pumpkin have to drive Oktoberfest out of the bars? I don't know. It's aggravating. I'm hoping this weekend some of the bars at Pod Crawl will have Oktoberfest beer. And if you want to hear me live, you can come down to Double L Bar and watch me. I'll be there with Bold Nights Out. We're going to be jumping from Cousins, the Grist House, Double L, Smokies, and Sidelines Bar and Grill, all here in Millville, all within walking distance. And I know that Sidelines at least has Oktoberfest still in bottles. But I remember like years ago where that's all you could find. It was Oktoberfest everywhere. It was wonderful. And I don't get it. It's... Why? What is with this anti-Oktoberfest craze? It's like nobody has good taste in beer. That's what it comes down to. And it's fall beer. A pumpkin is just not good. I'm sorry, it's not good beer. And if you think pumpkin is good beer, then you're wrong and you have bad taste. Anybody who's any kind of real beer drinker knows that Oktoberfest is the superior beer. We got an interesting, weird news story, and we're going to cue the music right now. All right, this story comes from Sportress of Blogitude. So I don't know if this is a real story, but if it is a real story, this is hilarious. And it's told by, allegedly it's told by Gary Player. And he talks about Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, another great golfer of that same generation. And he talks about a situation where there was a browning on the green. And according to Gary Player, Arnold Palmer had to go to the bathroom, and I guess he didn't go when he could, and he was out on the golf course, and he decided to take a dump out on the green. I feel like this story can't be real, but there's quotes here from Gary Player. I hope this is a parody, but apparently somebody came up to Gary Player and asked him, and they inquired about the situation. He told him, he blamed it on Palmer about this pooping. So who knows? This is coming from Gary Player. Maybe he's the one who pooped on the green. But yeah, interesting story. If it is real, then that's pretty freaking funny. But I don't know. I have a feeling it has to be a work of fiction. But that's your weird news. I remember I delivered for a company called, it was a company called Plantscape. I'll just put the name out there. And I delivered plants for Plantscape. And one of the places we went to was it was a golf course out in Latrobe. And let me pull it up here. Yeah, Laurel Highlands Golf. And it was a country club out there, or Laurel Valley. And Arnold Palmer was a member, and everything was pink. Everybody wore pink, and pink was their color. And I remember they had a pink flower, and they were very particular that it had to be the right shade of pink because that was their club's colors, and they wanted to make sure that everything was accurate. So Arnold Palmer was a member of this club, and I remember this lady who was our contact point when we would get down there, and she just talked about him like you could just see it in her eyes. She almost like viewed Arnold Palmer as if he was some sort of deity, the god of Latrobe. Much as I am the king of the Allegheny, he must have been the king of Laurel Highlands. But it was almost kind of weird. It was almost like Paterno-esque, where she just, viewed him in such high regard. And I'm not trying to say that he did anything like Paterno was involved with as far as looking the other way. No, he seemed like he was a great guy. He did wonderful things for Latrobe, but it was just like weird that he had that cult following, and especially in a sport such as golf, which is not nearly as, even now, with all of the popularity that Arnold Palmer brought to the game, it's still nowhere near as popular as like the NFL. And yeah, you get diehard fans, and maybe it's just that I'm not in that golf community, but I don't know many people who are as passionate about Tiger Woods when he was big, or let me think, what's his name, the new kid who's Rory McIlroy. I don't see anybody with that kind of passion where they just view somebody with such high regard that it's almost it's beyond celebrity, if that makes sense. So it was an interesting experience, though. It was a beautiful golf course. I really, really enjoyed it out there, and I'd love to go back. It was beautiful. I know that probably will not happen because I don't have any connections at all with that place, but it would be interesting. We're going to bring in Matt Gribshaw. He's next, and Matt is he's a professional golfer who competes in the Western PA Golf Association, the Pennsylvania Golf Association. He's also a golf educator, and he's a good friend of mine, so I thought it would be interesting to hear his perspective on what happened, what transpired this past weekend. So he's up next here on The River's Edge.
Hey guys, it's Mike Sasson, The Mike Sasson Show. You got anything planned September 30th? Well, now you do. It's National Podcast Day, and me and a bunch of other podcasters are going to be all around Millvale performing our podcasts for your entertainment. I'll be at Cousins Lounge at 6 p.m. performing. Come on out, say hi, be part of the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, me, Mike Sasson, and the Mike Sasson Show will be on live at 6 p.m. at Cousins Lounge here in Millvale. Love to see you out there.
All right, welcome back. He is a professional golfer. He teaches golf, and he's a good guy. Friend of mine, Matt Gribshaw, on the phone right now. You competed at the Western Pennsylvania Golf Association, also the Pennsylvania Golf Association, so it's real awesome to get your perspective here, Matt. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. I want to get your thoughts on the passing of Arnold Palmer. And first off, as a golfer, I have to ask the question. I asked Matt Geica this question, but maybe you have a different perspective. Do you think Arnold Palmer had a bigger influence on the world through his game of golf or through the invention of Arnold Palmer's iced tea, which I'm a big fan of, because anytime you go to like Sheetz or something and you look at the teas and there's nothing there you want, you can always count on this nice blend of a lemonade and iced tea mixture.
Oh, right on. I love an Arnold Palmer. I think everyone from this area does, as far as the iced tea and the lemonade goes. But definitely golf, man. I mean, he's pretty much taking a sport.
Hi, I'm Mike Storr, host of the Awesome Cast, which you can hear right here on River's Edge Radio. We're talking tech, getting geeky every week with people from Pittsburgh in the industry. Go check us out, awesomecast.net, or listen to us right here on River's Edge Radio, Thursday mornings, 8 a.m. after Funny Money.
$1 million and a half a week. I mean, he's a marketing genius. I personally had the opportunity to meet him about 2 years back. We were up in Latrobe. I was caddying for two good friends of mine, and it was a local event that he basically invites the 10 best amateurs to compete against the 10 best pros in our section. And my friends introduced me to him, and right away I felt like I was at home. I mean, the guy's warm. He's caring. He's humble. He's everything that everyone's ever said about him. Just a class act.
Yeah, you could just tell. You can tell a lot by watching somebody, and you could just tell from his mannerisms and the way he acted that he seemed genuine. You can a lot of times pick up when someone seems like a phony, but he always came across as real to me. So it's good to hear that is the case. You mentioned he was a marketing genius. Can you elaborate on that? Because he, for many of our listeners who may be millennials, he kind of hit his rise before we were really around to realize what he did and how he changed the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been watching a lot of the coverage lately on the Golf Channel as far as like his career, and last year they played some pretty epic footage of his life, and as far as marketing goes, it's just amazing that the guy took products that aren't even associated with golf, completely out there, Pennzoil, like all these different kinds of products. He put his face and his name on those products at a time when TV was just getting started. And it was just amazing to me to see that in a sport that really wasn't glorified, he put glory to it. He really changed the face of how you would look at a golfer and how you would, how you would just pretty much see in his works that he was just a commercial genius. I mean, he made $2 million throughout his career. Mm-hmm. Now, nowadays, that's not a lot of money for these players. But throughout his career, he only made so much playing. He made the majority of his money in doing the advertising, in his acquisitions, in his airport, in his country club at Latrobe, at his country club down in Bay Hill. I mean, it's just to me, a guy like that who has a lot of money could have been like one of those people that shined away from the limelight. But here he is, putting everything he has into, building a better game for the rest of us to enjoy.
We'll talk about his impact. You live in Westmoreland County. It's where I grew up at. Talk about his impact on Westmoreland County and how he has built up Latrobe. I mean, you go through Latrobe and you can't drive, a few hundred feet down the road without seeing his name somewhere.
Right. I mean, yeah, he has a dealership out there as well. And, anytime you're in Latrobe, there's memorabilia hanging at, if you go, like you said, to Sharky's, there's signed autographs of him there. Anytime I've ever played golf in or around Latrobe in Greensburg, when you walk in, there's a signed picture of him saying, best wishes, or, it was nice to meet you. Like, it's amazing the reach that the guy had.
I think it's amazing. Go ahead.
I think it was amazing that he was able to be reached.
Yeah.
Even in his later years. I mean, like I said, I met him late in his age. He was 85. This was 2 years back. And he was frail because he's an older man.
Sure.
And, time catches up with everyone. But it's almost like when I shook his hand and I introduced myself to him, it was just like an immediate connection. He looked you right in the eye. He said it was nice to meet you. He called me Mac, not Matt, but he called me Mac, and I wasn't about to correct him. Like it was, and he was kind of like a grandfather to a lot of us. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
He was somebody that you looked up to, iconic. Someone that started from basically nothing and just took the world by storm.
How did he influence you personally?
Me personally? Like I said, I just met him about 2 years ago.
But you know of him, and he's had such an influence on the game at large. It's kind of like, there's different people on the radio who I've never met, but their work has influenced me still.
Right. Well, as far as, watching highlights of him, seeing him, win golf tournaments, promote golf, promote the game, promote the business side, showing all the players nowadays how you're supposed to, act, how you're supposed to, respond in certain situations where, like, the media is on you. And just an overall sense of this guy was a great guy. I mean, he'd shake your hand. He'd stop in the middle of a round and come over and do autographs. I mean, nowadays, I go to PGA Tour events, and guys are walking straight down the middle of the fairway. There's hardly any fan interaction. When this guy played, like, that's why he has an army.
Sure.
He would come out, he would go out of his way to make you feel special. So, I mean, I haven't seen the likes of him on the tour nowadays, or for that matter, anyone that really has done what he's been able to do in his lifetime.
Do you think we're at a point where it's impossible to accomplish that because golf has become so popular that whereas before it was maybe a little bit more open? Do you think it's maybe a little bit more closed down with security and everything else because of the popularity and the large fan base that has developed around the game?
Impossible, I don't think. Hard, yes, definitely. I mean, it's definitely hard to duplicate or, do what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you'll see that, there'll be a couple golfers out there that, who emulate him and understand that, like, he was the king. That will come out and try to approach life and golf and all that in a sort of the same manner that he did it. I think there'll be a few, but there'll be none like him.
Where would you rank
He was
Arnold?
just amazing.
Where would you rank him in as far as comparing other legendary golfers throughout history? Where would you rank his actual play?
Number one.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
Over Jack Nicklaus?
I mean, not as far as records go, but as far as what he's been able to do with golf on the main stage, there isn't anybody out there that has been able to, that has the resume that he has. He took golf from a sport that no one really watched or even cared about. He took it and he blew it up and put it on the main stage. He founded the Golf Channel. So that in itself, that gives us 24-hour coverage. We never had that before Arnold Palmer. I mean, that in itself is one of, I think, his greatest accomplishments.
Yeah, definitely. What you do for the game at large definitely says a lot about who you are as a person, what you've been able to accomplish.
As far as from like a playing side, he won 7 majors, which there's only a few guys that have won more majors than him. I think Jack.
Yeah, Jack Nicklaus.
And Tiger Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the list is short after that. There may be one or two others that are up there. He won 62 PGA Tour events, which is a pretty high number.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's definitely top 10 up there. And but when he lost, he was a gracious loser. He would come over and shake your hand. He would give you a hug. You just beat him. He's competitive, just like all us Pittsburgh people. He doesn't want to lose. He never wanted to lose a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
He always fought till the end. So a guy that puts it all out there, he goes for broke. He never holds back. You never really lose. If you lost and you gave it your all, you came up a little bit short, but you didn't necessarily lose. And I respect him for the way he played, his style of play. Basically, who he was, to me, was more important than how he played.
And now you've played competitively. Talk about some of your accomplishments and what you've done, and living here in southwestern Pennsylvania in kind of the golf culture that Arnold Palmer created.
Right. I mean, I started golf when I was young. I was about 3. My dad cut me down a club. I would remember watching another star from the area, local, not as big, but still big in his own right, Rocco Mediate. I went to a clinic when I was younger, and Rocco was there, and he's the only other guy from this area that is well renowned for playing on the PGA Tour. And it's just what Arnold's been able to do as far as this area, generating golf enthusiasts, activists, people that go out and play the game on a day-to-day basis, or say 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been amazing, because where we live in Southwest PA, there's well over 100 golf courses that are accessible. And I don't believe that we would have the opportunities that we have today if it weren't for him putting golf out there, first tee, doing all the things that he's been able to do in his lifetime. It's really opened up the gate for blue-collar workers, not so much country club anymore, only. Guys can come out and find a tee time, book a tee time, get out to the course, play around, enjoy it, have a couple of drinks afterwards, do whatever, invite your friends out. And as far as my accomplishments go with golf, I've won at a junior level, I've won on a collegiate level, and I've just recently started competing on the higher levels, which due to due to what Mr. Palmer's been able to do, it is the toughest competition on the planet when it comes to going out and playing golf.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to bring your A game, and you know that when you tee up. You know when you tee up, you're playing yourself, you're playing the course, but you're also playing stiff competition. So, like I said, I did a few events. I traveled to Florida in the winter, and then last year, and then I played again this year throughout the summer. Each year is a little bit different. I mean, sometimes you do really well, you have a good year. Sometimes you do not so good, and then you're reflecting on it. But it's a game that I've always enjoyed. I've always gone to these tournaments with high expectations, you know, and played it from the first tee all the way to the final putt of the last hole. You know, leave it all out there. And I'd like to credit some of that to the style of play that he had. He went out, first swing, bash it out there as far as you can, you know, get started, go out there, do your thing, you know, hold on to it, hold it together as long as you can, and, you know, make as many birdies as you can.
Very cool, Matt. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. And what do you have planned next for your golf career? What's up next for you?
Well, I plan on working this fall. I got a membership at a local club, or one country club. It's pretty much been my home my entire life. I've lived in Westmoreland County, and I just go out there. The members out there are great. The facility's nice. I go out there. I practice as much as I can, and come this winter, start back up. Head down to Florida, play in some tournaments down there. They have a great, they've got a great developmental tour down there, known as the Minor League Golf Tour. I'm going to play some events in that, and we'll see from there.
All right, very cool. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. That's Matt Gribshaw. Great guy, great golfer. I actually played against him in the past, kind of. We were part of the same church, and the church would have an annual golf outing for the church, and his team usually ended up winning the tournament, either first place or second place, and it was a scramble, so it wasn't just all him, it was everybody in the team, and I think they almost always won first place. My team was the reigning champs for last place in the tournament, but it was always a good time either way. We got your holiday of the day, and we're going to end the show up with that, as always, right now, here on the River's Edge. So today is actually, there's two interesting holidays today that we can celebrate. Woo! It's National Pancake Day. So I'm very fortunate where I'm surrounded by phenomenal pancakes living here in Millville with Pamela's, Millville Diner, there's the places, DeLuca's, there's Kelly's, all sorts of good places that I can realistically walk to if I really wanted to. So today's National Pancake Day. It's still time for brunch, so you can still find somewhere to eat, I am sure. So we've got that. And also today is National Shamu the Whale Day. Woo! That's right, National Shamu the Whale Day today on September the 26th. If you're looking for a reason to celebrate, a real reason to celebrate, well, you've got National Podcast Day, International Podcast Day, September 30th, the Pod Crawl. I will be there at the Double L Bar. Be number 3 or number 4 on the list. We've got Mike Sasson to kick things off at Cousins, drinking partners at Grist House. I will be there at the Double L with Bold Pittsburgh and Bold Nights Out. Awesome Cast. You've got Awesome Cast at Smokies and the Jagoff podcast at Sidelines Bar and Grill down the street. And I'm actually kind of awake today. I got like 4 hours before I came in of sleep. I am just ready to go. I'm ripe with energy. And now I get to go outside in this cool temperature. Bring back my summer! I will catch you Wednesday right here at riversedgepgh.com.